All right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I am Bowden. I'm the author of Collecting Cash, and I'm here with Michael Wakefield, who's an attorney and my new buddy. And we're going to talk about all things collections. Y'all know, y'all who follow me know, we love to talk about Collecting Cash. As y'all really know, we love to talk about this thing. What happened was Michael and I started talking about this, and it's always y'all know, if y'all are in business, y'all know you all have a story. And when you have people that owe you money, it's always, especially if they don't pay you on time, the line is, well, what happened was, and then you sit back in your chair and you're like, deep breath. Where's my Coke or my Mountain Dew or my Dr. Pepper or whatever else you need to sip on? Because you already know. Here we go. So listen, y'all, come on in the room. Let me go ahead and get one of these first banners going. So, as I said, I'm D. Bowden. I'm the author of Collect the Cash. My guest tonight is Michael Wakefield, who's an attorney in Loudoun County, Virginia. And we're going to talk about collecting the cash, why it's so important to recover your money, collect your money, and actually stay profitable. So I'd like to get the conversation started off with a story. So once upon a time, a long time ago, I'm kidding, seriously, about 15 years ago, I used to work for a small IT company outside of Boston, where I'm originally from. The company had $8 million in outstanding receivables. Exactly. That part. $8 million. I know Michael's sitting here rocking because he's like, $8 million? Are you serious? It's like, that's a lot of money. I know, right? So the company has $8 million. They hire me and ask me to come in and collect the cash. So you know how it is when you get hired with the company. They bring you on board. You get your cubicle, you get your box, you get your plant, you have a seat. You're like, here's your list. Get to work. My part of the story has a short conversation with God. I talk to God, I get my clue, and I discovered that business-to-business collections is three things. It's problem solving, customer service, and the secret sauce is gratitude. Work to collect $6 million in 60 days while working part-time. Then the unthinkable happens. The CEO of the company says, listen, we need to have a conversation. Now, if you've been in sales or accounts receivable, you're expecting a bonus. Nope. Come downstairs, and he says, listen, I want to thank everybody across all departments. So that's sales, contracts, order entry, order fulfillment, invoicing, and accounts receivable. Me. Thank you all very, very much for what you've done. Appreciate it. We've made an executive decision. We're closing the company. You got 30 minutes to go get that same box that you came up in here with and leave the building. 2 months before Christmas, 100 people lose their job, the business goes under, and that's it. And so when I met Michael, I was sharing a little bit about this because this part of business, which is accounts receivable, aka invoicing, aka billing, aka debt collection, that part of business tends to get neglected a lot because a lot of people just don't like to track their invoices, track their payments. They really don't like to have to go ask their customers for payments. And so Michael and I were talking about this because I said, do you run up against this in your business? And if you do, how do you teach people to not neglect accounts receivable? Because I get it. When you start your business, you're trying to solve a problem. You have this great idea. And I joke about this and I say, normally when people have this great idea for business, and normally it's like this, I was out with my buddies and we were talking and I grabbed a napkin. I'm old school. You grab a napkin, you jot a couple of thoughts down. You're like, oh yeah. Then you go get an LLC. Hopefully if you do it correctly, you get an LLC, articles of organization, you get your EIN number, your social security number for your business, you get a business checking account, or you're freelancing, whatever. Point is, you got this great idea, your thing, your widget, your idea is the next best thing in business. But then you don't know how to run a business. That's one part. Number two, you don't know how to invoice for your business. And then number three, you don't know how to collect the cash. And so we were talking about this because I wanted to talk about the challenges of tracking your accounts. Then what do you do when you get on the phone? How do you handle accounts receivable? And then why this matters so much. And so my good friend Michael said, well, you know what, let's have a conversation. I said, well, you know what? I teased him. I said, listen, we're going to put this show on the road. He was like, wait a minute, this is fancy. We're going to be fancy up in here. I'm like, it's not fancy. We're just going to invite the people in to our regular conversation, because really how we met was I was at a BNI networking event, and I was introducing myself, which, when you go to networking events, you have to introduce yourself. My name is this. I work with people who do this. And Michael says, wait a minute, you do AR? I'm like, yeah. He was like, oh, I didn't want to chat with you. We need to hang out. We need to talk. So we started talking, and I said, well, let's do something live and let's educate the people about collections, because we both are in this field. He's in this field on the legal side. I'm in it as a practitioner. Like, I work with companies who have outstanding receivables and they don't have a plan on how to recover the money, and they don't like talking to people. They don't know what to say, or they say the wrong thing, and then they're like, oh, oops. And I'm like, we're trying to get you to reduce your oops. That's kind of what we do. So listen, let me switch banners. And let me introduce my good friend, Michael Wakefield. This is his contact information that's scrolling across the bottom. Michael, tell the good people who you are and why you said yes to hanging out with me, this child with the polka dot shirt.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dee. So I'm Michael Wakefield. I'm an attorney based in Loudoun County, but we do legal services basically all over Northern Virginia. And one of the areas that I do a lot of is collection of debts and basically contract law, contract litigation. So obviously I found kindred spirit in Dee. It's not everybody who's particularly interested in collection of debts matters. It's not the most cutting edge, sexiest part of business management. And I think Dee, you made a great point. When you're thinking about starting a business, it's about an exciting idea and making sure that you get paid for the work that you've done or the product that you've sold is not necessarily the most interesting part, but it's an integral part of business management. So basically, the job that you do, the item that you sell is the first part. And then there's lots of other parts. There's compliance issues with laws, there's tax issues, and as simple as just getting your amount paid. So every business, I always like to say when I'm talking to a potential client or anybody who wants to talk about collections, every business runs into accounts receivable issues. It's not, ones that do a shoddy job. It's not ones that do 1,000 jobs a year. Unless you're really lucky, you're going to run into an issue like this. So there's strategies that you can implement to avoid the, collection issues, accounts receivable. Getting Dee's book and getting on Dee's schedule is probably the first one. But there are ways that you can structure a contract. And I talk to clients about this all the time, where your company is going to be protected in the event of someone who's not going to come through or a company who's not going to come through. Examples are deposits, strong language that favors your company, a personal guarantee if you're working with a company instead of an individual, a thoughtful contract that is written by someone who knows what they're doing, where you're going to be protected if something happens. Other things to avoid the debt altogether, thoughtful invoicing, like not just shooting an email that's an attachment with nothing in the body of the email, but sending invoices by email and US mail, and making sure you give someone a ring and say, hey, I just sent this over. Call me if you have any questions about it. Those are ways, again, to avoid it. But like I said at the beginning, you can't avoid it all the time. So let's talk about once it happens. You've sent the invoice, you did a good job, you're owed the money, and you need the money. That's when you can come to someone like me at my firm, where we do collection of debts. I have maybe 400 to 600 cases open at a time, where it could be $500 for cutting someone's lawn, or it could be $600,000 for not coming through on the purchase of a house or something like that. So generally, cases like that are done on a contingency basis for my firm. What that means is, and it works really well for people, what that means is you're not paying an attorney hourly to hopefully collect a debt. You're getting paid a percentage. You pay the attorney a percentage of what is collected, and that way there's no surprises. Basically, the one thing I always like to stress as well is the more time I always say your potential client spends trying to collect the money, maybe in an inefficient way, the less valuable your fee is for what you've done. So a lot of the time it makes some sense to bring in somebody like my firm to take over. I like to think that attorneys like me get paid to take on someone else's stresses and someone else's anxieties. And that's what this process is, and really the collection process, it takes persistence. That's really the key is
Michael,
following
let
up.
me jump in about that because first of all, thank you so much for that explanation. That was really good, and you're right. That's the part that I think most people don't understand. Collections, business to business collections, is persistence. You have to track your calls. You have to, first of all, you made a couple good points. You talked about the invoicing and a thoughtful invoice. I never heard it called a thoughtful invoice. I was like, oh, wait a minute, I may have to borrow that. What's a thoughtful invoice? But seriously, a thoughtful invoice or a proper invoice is one that has, if you have a contract number, that's on there, the name of your name of your business, your client's information, the period of performance, like what were the dates that you did the service, how much were you billing them for, and then when how much money is due to you, and then all the pertinent information. Then you submit it to them. And perseverance is basically follow up. Perseverance and follow up kind of go together. Because here's the thing: the fortune is in the follow up. That's where the money's at. Because you can prepare a proper invoice or a thoughtful invoice and submit it, but if you never check to make sure that your invoice got received, that's like step number one. Did you, even though they tell you submit it to this, info@whatever.com. Okay, great. But did you also follow up to make sure they actually got it? Part of collections, business collections is three things. It's problem solving, it's customer service. You have to do the follow up. Yes, I submitted my invoice. I want to confirm that it was into the right system and you have the right account number, blah, blah, blah. And it was in. Then, is everything okay? Because like you mentioned earlier about, whether you cut grass for $500, you paint a house, or you have a multi-$1,000 contract. If there's a problem or problems, you're not getting paid. But a lot of times what happened is they don't tell you that there's a problem. Because the way they hold you hostage, which is kind of harsh, but it's what they do, is they hold up your money. Versus good customer service is the reason we're not paying you, or the reason your invoice has not been processed, is that there is a problem. And you get the chance to get on the phone or become in person or do a Zoom call and say, hey, on behalf of my company, I would like to acknowledge there was an issue created. We didn't know. Give us a chance to actually course correct that so that we can actually get paid before we have to go bring in legal. Because on my side of the fence, I want to talk to you about how can we solve the problem before I have to go say, hey, Michael, can you and your firm help me with this issue? I'm trying to get you to learn how to get on the phone, do problem solving, do customer service, do gratitude, and work those things out and prepare a proper, thoughtful invoice and track it and know when are the payments coming in before you have to say, hey, D, I need to bring you in, or hey, I got to go talk to Michael. Go ahead, please jump in.
Absolutely right. Yeah, the payment follow-up is key, whether it's with the client before they hire me or once it's me. If someone says, I'm going to pay you $50 on July 15th, it's your responsibility to, maybe you wait until noon or 1 on July 15th, right. But I reach out, and I can do that because, of the infrastructure I have set up with my firm. But sometimes clients will say, I'm running a business here. I'm trying to get new clients and, I'm trying to grow my business. And so that's where we get back to the first thing we were talking about, where collection issues are not a main focus sometimes of especially new businesses. But the key is when you say, okay, it's going to be paid on July 15th, you hop on the phone and you say, hey, just following up on our conversation, I've got my credit card processing system ready to go. You have that number on you so we can run the payment. And it's that persistence. And, one other aspect, again, this is once I'm involved, is if I set up a structure where it's like, we hope we can get this resolved. So the way the collection process works anytime is it should start with a letter or an invoice. And I always do that if I get hired. But let's say if I don't hear from you within 30 days, I have to proceed. After 30 days, you bet I'm going to proceed, because if I don't, I've lost all credibility with this client and possibly, especially with social media, with lots of different individuals. So follow up and persistence is the key for collection and avoidance of AR or dealing with AR. And so I always say to business owners, you need to be honest with yourself about whether or not you can handle that. setting up really good infrastructure and processes before issues even arise is really important. And then if they arise, then it's like, okay, how do I address this? I can't keep telling myself that I'm going to call, I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to file my own small claims matter. It's important to be honest with yourself and your strengths as a business professional. And sometimes it's important to hire a professional who does this type of thing.
Let's talk about that for a minute. Okay, why is it so important for you as a business owner to be honest with yourself, and why do you think business owners are scared to do that? I'm just curious what you see, because you see them out of different sense. So when they come to you and it's like, Mr. Wakefield, you're like, welcome to my office. May I get you a cup of coffee? I get you some tea, juice, water. Okay, the notepad out, and you already got your list of questions. So when they start with that story, you know how we say what had happened was, when they start with the what had happened was, whatever spin it is, why do you think they do that?
I think most often, you could say it's I don't know if it's a pride thing, but I think in general, especially young businesses tend to be one or two man or woman shows.
Right.
And there's a ton of responsibility on the business owner, a lot of pressure, a lot of deadlines, a lot of bills. And so considering, especially, we're not even fully talking about just this, but especially thinking about hiring an attorney, because there's all sorts of bad reputations that attorneys, I think, have earned for themselves. But considering adding on a new expense, that's tough. But basically, to answer your question, I think it's difficult to be, not necessarily be honest with yourself, but be really sort of maybe generous with yourself, and also point out areas where you as a business owner can improve or outsource to be a better business professional. And I say this a lot, but old sayings and adages have, I think, often some truth in them. And basically, jack of all trades is master of none is one that I say a lot. If you're trying to do everything, something's going to get missed. And running your business and growing your business is generally what a business professional should be focused on. And other areas. And here's another old adage: you got to spend money to make money. You gotta think of ways that you can improve your business, and sometimes outsourcing or talking to a professional who handles this a lot. You say, when people come into my office, what are the first things? I do a lot of this type of work, like I said, and so I've heard a lot over and over. And everyone's situation obviously is individual and new specifically to them. And I've heard new ones before, but there are a lot of mistakes I see over and over made by business owners, and a lot of what had happened was excuses that I've heard from the other side.
So let's talk about that. Let's give the good people, like, what are three common mistakes that have come when they come into your office? What are the three mistakes that you're looking at, man? If I, remember how you used to do, you go do the tallies, and you get to 5, and you're like, man, I got 5 sets of these tallies. I've talked to 5 different companies, and I'm tallying up. This one made the same mistake. That one, it's like, what's the theme that's running? And so we can hopefully educate people to, at a minimum, take some good notes. Hey, let me stop this right here. All y'all that are listening, I hope you have your pad and your pen, and you are taking notes. You've got 2 experts in collections. You've got the legal side and then the practitioner side who are working to teach you what not to do and what to do, so you can actually stay solvent and stay in business. But Michael's going to give you 3 tips on what are the 3 things that always come up, or repeat, can I say this? Can I say they're repeat offenders without getting in trouble? Okay, good. So what are the 3 repeat offenders and mistakes are in business? Let's teach people.
The first one would be absolutely the handshake deal. Handshake deals are, in my opinion, always really risky. And there are some areas of business where it's so competitive that you can't even break out a contract, or else someone, the potential client will just move on to the next option. So I totally understand that. Some businesses have that to deal with. But if you're in a business, a trade, any sort of professional, like financial professional business, and you don't have a contract, even a basic one, that's a mistake I see all the time, where someone will do $10,000 worth of work or $10,000 worth of product, and say, well, they told me they'd pay me by the 15th. It's like, well, where's it all in writing? So number one, not getting anything in writing. Number two would be doing no research about your client. So basically, I'll have someone who hires me to review a case, and they will have a contract, and it'll say, whatever, Red Blue Green LLC, and that's their client. And I'll just type into Google, into the Virginia State Corporation Commission, whatever you want to say, I'll type it in, and it doesn't exist. And it took me 2 seconds to do that.
Wow.
So that's important, because then if they breach, you have no claim against a fake company. So, that's something I see all the time. And I guess
can I pause you right there, because that's a big thing. How I'm almost like in shock, but I mean, not really, but it's like, but for new business owners that might be thinking, can that really happen? It's like, tell them why that's so important for them to verify that the person they do business with actually they're legit. Like if I Google them or go to the state office and say, confirm this company exists. Please tell them why that's so important.
So right off the bat, insurance,
Yep.
Companies have insurance. Second would be anticipating a breach. Sometimes running a business means anticipating a breach of the contract. And so if someone doesn't follow through, that's all a contract is one party saying they're going to do something and the other party saying they're going to do something in exchange. So if one party doesn't do what they say they're going to do, you are faced with, and if you've done good practices and they still won't come through, you're faced with legal proceeding. And if you've signed a contract with a company that just is either inactive, that's what it is most often. Rarely is someone going to say, this is my company and it doesn't even exist. It has happened a lot. But
so are you saying, wait a minute, are you saying they got ghosted? Are you saying they got ghosted?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. They'll say, this is my company and it doesn't exist.
Okay.
But more often it's, a company that was terminated by the Corporation Commission in 2017 for failure to pay their, corporation dues. And so it's really important to know if they're in business because you need to be able to have that. That's why you're signing a contract. Why sign the contract then if you weren't going to look into it? So that'd be the second. And then the third would be basically letting something sit for too long. So everyone should know there are statute of limitations in every state, but in Virginia that are really strict. So if you let something sit for too long, you may lose out on your rights to collect it at all. So it's important to sort of move quickly. That's why you think of net 30, 30 days, net 60, whatever. You should be turning these over quickly and getting paid, or have a process in place to move on with somebody else, like my firm or like something like that.
Gotcha. So 3 tips. So we've got, make sure the person have a contract. That was the first one. Make sure that the company that you're doing business with actually is legally in business. Confirm that they've Googled them, or what was it? So by this, each state has, what was it called again?
State Corporation Commission in Virginia.
State Corporation.
It's just a free. It's a free entity search, and you can see if someone's active. And just to expand more on that one, you also could type in someone's name, and they've got 50 bad Google reviews for not paying their bills. So you'll get a lot out of that. And even on Facebook groups, you can find, this company, didn't come through, and you'll save yourself a lot of heartache there.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because you and I joke about this. I joke about it all the time. I say, it takes, even though we're live on Facebook right now, and I joke about this, but I'm serious on the same side that the reputation, your business is you, whether you're a solopreneur or you've got a team, you work really hard to build your reputation. And, as Michael was talking about, these reviews, it takes 30 seconds for somebody to go live and say such and such and such happened. And all that work that you've done to build your brand, build your whole thing is gone. And you are doing damage control, trying to go back and explain, jokingly, but seriously, what had happened was, and that's where I was talking earlier about customer service. You know, I happen to be old school, and I still believe in relationships, and I believe that some of the things before people go jumping on social media and putting everything on blast, sometimes it's a phone call. Now, are there people that don't do business right? Yes. We're not talking about them. We're talking about the average person who actually really wants to do business correctly, and there are mistakes that are made. That's why you have insurance. That's why you have a contract. But there's also, can we have an old school conversation? Can we talk? And because sometimes there was something that was misunderstood either on my side or your side, but if I won't talk to you, and you can't, there's two things. Everything can't be solved with 144 characters. Everything's not solved in 144 characters. Sometimes you actually have to talk to people. You have to have a conversation. You have to either get on Zoom or, oh my gosh, here's a real concept. How about you meet up at Starbucks for coffee and talk? Goodness gracious. I mean, I'm being funny, but there's a part of that still matters. And sometimes when you see the person and you hear the story or you hear the snafu, you can address it, because sometimes it's a simple fix. Not always, but sometimes it is. But that's another part of business. See, that's my side. I'm working on that side. I'm working on the untangling it before we get to legal. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. But I think that's so important, to have really good processes to try to avoid the collection issue altogether. And, one thing you just mentioned too, I think is really true. I do, like I said, hundreds and thousands of these cases over the years. And the majority of them, the substantial majority of people who, the word is debtor, a debtor company or a debtor individual, know they owe the money and want to pay the money, but something has come up to prevent them to be able to do it, whether it's with their business or with their with their personal life. Something's come up. And so when you do what you're suggesting, treat them like a person, treat them respectfully, and come to them and meet with them and try to get it resolved, you're generally going to, hopefully get at least some good results. People are generally willing to enter into payment plans even.
Yes.
And, I have hundreds and hundreds of payment plans going on at a time with my office, because clients are happy, clients are happy to get some money coming through the door. Right. And the debtor individual or company is happy to start working off some of their debt and, come to the table. But you're only able to do that if you treat people with respect and come and meet them where they are. And I think that's a really important part of the process, whether it's before the debt arises or after, when you've hired an attorney.
Yeah, great point. And I agree with you. I talk about this, all the time. I talk about, some money is better than no money. I would rather you tell me, listen, I owe you $1,000. I don't have it, but what I do have is this. Can we meet, and I accept the partial payment, and then you document it, email or contract or something, so it's documented that, okay, yeah, you owe me $1,000, but I don't have it. I'm gonna do $250 today, and I'm gonna spread it out over 4 payments. Fine, document that, and you agree to that, and then honor your agreement. A lot of this stuff is just, some of it's old school, but it's what's needed. And I think people just need to be reminded of, this is how business is done. It's relationships, it's problem solving, it's customer service, it's gratitude, it's the meeting of the minds, it's taking responsibility. If you've made a mistake, like for example, if you've ordered 10 sets of sneakers and I only got 8, I expect you to get on the phone. Hi, this is D. I'm so sorry you didn't get all your sneakers. I'm before you call me, because I have messed up with my order, I'm taking responsibility to tell you there's a problem. I'm gonna gift you an extra pair of sneakers. I'm gonna do something with customer service to appease you, number one. But number two, I want to make sure that our relationship stays intact, because I want you to do more business with me. That's across all boards. It's not in just collections or law. It's everything, and those things matter. And I just think that those are the things that people seem to get away from. But listen, y'all. I hope y'all have enjoyed this conversation with my good friend Michael Wakefield. Michael, thank you so much for your time, for the 3 tips, for breaking down what businesses need to know. And then I forgot to ask you, but last question before we sign out here. You didn't tell me the story. So what's the craziest story you've had with somebody not trying to pay their bill?
So I've had actually more than once a case where I've been hired, and it turned out that an individual had their minor child sign the contract for them,
Are
and
you kidding me?
sneak that into it where, like,
Wow.
then it's like once you get into a legal atmosphere, it's like, well, a minor can't sign a contract. And I've also had someone who filed bankruptcy, you know, I think 7 or 8 times within like a 3-year period, all with different social security numbers.
Wow.
And it was wild trying to get the basically trustee who was handling that to understand the breadth of basically the fraud that was going on with that.
Yeah,
But yeah, you see all sorts of crazy stuff like that in the business.
definitely. Oh my gosh. Well, anyway, thank you for sharing those. So again, tell the good people. So as we've had your website has been scrolling across this. So it's www.wakefieldp, the letter P, LLC.com. And then for y'all who are interested in learning more about me, my book is actually called Collect the Cash. Let me go ahead and do a quick little shameless plug. There we go. There's the book. Yay, that's the book. You can find the book at www.collectthecash.biz/book. That's www.collectthecash.biz/book. On behalf of myself and Michael Wakefield, we want to thank you so much for joining us for our fun conversation on Collect the Cash and why you need to make sure the sale is complete and the money's in the bank. All right, y'all, take good care. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.